Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast, joining us here on the Western Hotline as we chat about Bills and Bengals and also look back a little bit to the Steeler game. Joe, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today. We moved your time a little bit, but good to catch up this week. How are you today?
Doing well, guys. Excited for the Bills and coming off of that win against Pittsburgh. It feels like they really needed that, and it feels like some things are shaping up a little better than if that game would have went differently.
Yeah. Joe, I'll ask you the same question I kind of asked Howard, which is, does the Pittsburgh performance give you a lot of stuff to move forward with, or are you just kind of able to isolate and say, like, hey, it was a really nice game. It's nice to see them have a really nice game pretty much in all phases?
I think it is that, Jeremy, and this team, this Bills 2025 team, has kind of been confusing in a lot of different ways because we've seen vulnerability and we've seen success in areas that they've been vulnerable at times as well, whether that's run defense, and sometimes it looks really bad, and sometimes it looks good, or sometimes the pass rush looks really good, and sometimes it's not there. And offensively, they can run the ball really well a lot of times, and the pass game can be inconsistent, but I think the identity of this team is not so much rooted in any one key element, but when they do find success, they are able to figure it out, right? Like whatever they need that day, they can come up with it. And I think that's happened 8 times, right? And 4 times it hasn't. And so it's about what problems are presented, how do they figure it out? And I think this Steelers matchup was a good example of how the Bills were able to figure it out.
Joe Marino on the Western Hotline. All right, Joe, on to Cincinnati this week against the Bengals. A healthy Joe Burrow. He played last week. They won in Baltimore. It's a lot of turnovers that happened in that game. The defense for Cincinnati got roasted and still won. Baltimore fumbled the ball 4 times. I want to ask you about Cincinnati because we haven't seen that many matchups with the Bengals. But when we do see it, we see Joe Burrow have all the answers to the test. Do you expect that to continue? And if so, what is it about this exact matchup, Burrow against the McDermott defense, where he seems to have all the answers?
Yeah, Jeremy, I mean, we've seen 2 games of Joe Burrow against the Bills. I think he's completing like 68% of his passes, almost 600 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Then, of course, the beginning of the DeMar Hamlin game, the Bills couldn't stop him, right? I haven't seen in, like, I guess it's about 10 quarters of the Bills against Joe Burrow have really any success of trying to get him slowed down. And, you know, that 2023 game where Sean McDermott was the defensive coordinator, he blitzed Joe Burrow like 30%, which is a pretty high rate, and Burrow killed him. And you think about some of the other games where they're playing a little bit more coverage, and he killed them. So this is a big test for the Bills. I'm very concerned about the pass rush that is completely non-existent over the last 4 games, especially with Joey Bosa's status up in the air. And so I think the Bills are going to have challenges with their defense. The answer to me is they got to score. The Bills got to score. They're at home. They've been a way better team at home. Their offense scores a lot of points at home. That has to show up. And this is a Bengals defense that doesn't offer a whole lot of resistance. They've given up the most yards. They give up the most points. They're second worst in third downs. Like, this is a game where the Bills offense that's capable of going out and scoring 35, 40, 45 points, we got to see it because I think Burrow's going to put a lot of stress on Buffalo's defense.
You feel like best case scenario, this game could look something like the Tampa game looked?
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, Joe. I think it could look very similar to that, and maybe with a little bit more rushing success for the Bills. I mean, the Bengals really don't have it when it comes to their D-line and linebackers. They're playing a couple of really young linebackers that are, you know, they're drinking through a fire hose when you watch them play, and I think this is a game where James Cook can really, really exploit some opportunities against this Bengals front, and I think that the Bills should be able to throw the ball. So what excites me about this game is what is possible for this Bills offense at home. And really, whatever they want to be, they should be able to be it. The real key is going to be you got to finish drives. So if you want to be this efficient offense that can throw it and run it and be two-dimensional, great. You got to get 6. This is a game where field goals – boy, they're just not going to help you because with all due respect to the Bills' defense and a lot of success that they've had lately, we haven't seen them very strong against Burrow. And with this pass rush literally bottom of the league over the last 4 weeks with no real belief that it's going to be better this week, that's where I get concerned. And so this offense has really got to show out on Sunday.
It could be interesting how, like you said, like they could be whatever they want to be. That'll be curious because, like, one thing they were in Tampa was big plays, and there were shorter, quicker drives, more drives because of that, and you got a higher scoring game. And if they feel like, man, we don't have a pass rush, Bosa's not playing, and to protect our defense, let's run it all over Cincinnati and let's kind of, whittle down the amount of drives that there are. I wonder if that's what the Bills will end up targeting.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more like the Kansas City script, if you will. That's the one that I would kind of point more towards, where the Bills were. That was probably the best example of the Bills being two-dimensional, controlling some clock, being efficient, right? I think at the core, that's what the Bills want to be. But it comes down to you got to score. And not field goals. This is not a field goal game. And so I think that's a fair call-out is, I think we're going to get an idea for what the Bills truly want to be offensively in this game, which I think is two-dimensional, and I think it'll look a little bit like that Kansas City game.
Joe Marino joining us on the Western Hotline. Joe, looking at this defense, Shaq Thompson getting a lot of run. It feels like this has been a groundswell of support for the way they look when Shaq Thompson is out there on the field. Is it so much so now that, like, this is as obvious to anybody out there, like he's going to be their middle linebacker going forward, you think?
It'd be hard for me to understand anything other than that. On my podcast today, I talked about the Bills' defensive EPA with and without Shaq Thompson on the field. And EPA, is not a super familiar metric for most, but it's expected points added. It's a really good way to measure how good a unit is because it basically takes the situations that a defense is or an offense is presented, compares it to historical norms, and then gives you an idea of, like, okay, what's the expectation for that play. And the Bills' defense, when Shaq Thompson is on the field, their defensive EPA would be the equivalent of what the Denver Broncos are this year, number 4 in the NFL. When Shaq Thompson's off the field, the Bills' defense is the equivalent of the 28th best defense in the league, which is what the Tennessee Titans are. And so those would be your parallels. And I know that's not a perfect way to say it. The Bills have had 171 more snaps without Shaq Thompson on the field, but they're just better. They're just significantly better when Shaq Thompson's on the field because I think he can kind of help mask some of the warts that the Bills have with their defensive tackle situation, where they're pretty inconsistent with how they fit the run and maintaining their gap integrity. And Shaq Thompson's a legit downhill, read, react, play through contact, leverage blocks appropriately, leverage gaps appropriately, tackler. Like he's that type of guy. He's a traditional Mike. And he doesn't hurt you in coverage either. He can help you in coverage. And so with Terrell Bernard playing through some injuries, and even when he's healthy, that downhill ability not being a strength of his, it kind of exacerbates your issues with defending the run. When you have a small middle linebacker that struggles to play through contact and deconstruct blocks and tackle with defensive tackles that are more penetration style guys that aren't super stout against a run, like you got a bad recipe there. Shaq Thompson helps overcome some of that. Now we got to be real about Shaq Thompson. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's had some significant injuries over the last few years, but while you got him right now, I think you got to get him on the field. You're clearly better with him, and at a minimum, I think this is a player that you want to keep around for as long as he wants to play. I mean, you see some linebackers out there that are aging very, very well. Levante David with the Bucks, Demario Davis with the Saints, Bobby Wagner with Washington, and I think that Shaq Thompson, can certainly help the Bills the rest of this year and maybe even into the future.
Joe, I want to ask you one question before we go. Our Twitter poll, which team would you most like to avoid in a playoff matchup? They play this week, Chiefs hosting the Texans, and whichever team loses has a big-time uphill climb. It'd be more damaging for the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs, if they lose, have a 14% chance to make the playoffs. If the Texans lose, they're at like 37%. But here we have one team that has knocked the Bills out of the playoffs 4 times, and the other is the team that has made them look the worst version of themselves twice now in the regular season. So what's your answer? Which team you would least of the two like to see in a playoff matchup, Chiefs or Texans?
I'll tell you, the Bills would have to go to Houston, right? That's been a house of horrors for the Bills. We saw this year, last year when Josh went 9-30, go back to the playoff game where that was chaotic, go back to his rookie season, the game where he hurt his elbow. Yeah. Like, it's been a house of horrors going to Houston. But my goodness, the Bills season has ended in Arrowhead 3 times, right? So can we choose other? I'll be honest with you. I don't want Mahomes. I don't want to deal with Mahomes in the playoffs. I just don't. And so Give me the Bills dealing with Houston. I think that would be the better matchup.
And then one more. New England, of course, is like a big topic. The division, their record, their win streak. I don't think they're frauds at all. I think anybody making the case they might be a little inflated. I feel like I want to listen to that. The schedule has been soft for them, but they've not tripped. That's like the difference between the Bills and the Patriots is the Bills have tripped a couple times and New England has not. So how high is their ceiling this year, do you think?
Well, I think we look at this AFC in general, and it feels wide open. I mean, as soon as you want to diminish New England, okay, well, who are you propping up? Well, that team's got problems too, right? And to your point, Jeremy, and I fully agree with you. They're 11-2, and they've avoided the slip up, and they've had chances, whether that was against Cincinnati or against Tampa or Atlanta or even New Orleans. The Bills, right? They've had their chance to blow it, right? They've had late game mistakes, and it hasn't cost them. And I think that's a sign of a really well-coached team that plays good situational ball, which is Mike Vrabel, right? I mean, I know nobody wants to hear it, but yeah, I believe the Patriots are a really, really good football team. Yes, they have taken advantage of a soft schedule, but they haven't had hiccups. The Bills have had hiccups against the Falcons, against the Dolphins, against that Patriots team in Buffalo, against the Texans. So the Bills, you want to be mad about the Bills letting the division slip away. Don't be mad at the Patriots.
Yeah.
Don't be mad at be mad at the Bills for not taking care of the business that they need to take care of. And obviously this is all but slipped away at this point.
Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast here for our weekly visit. Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Joe Marino. You can find everything he does at thejoemarino.com, from his all 22 reviews to, of course, the Locked On Bills podcast, the Bill Squad show, all that stuff. Always great to talk to Joe.